Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Kicking It with Zain, the belt guy. It's me, Zain. There's the belt. I finally have a guest who actually is responsible for at least two of those badges or plates on that belt. So this man really needs no introduction if you are a Giants fan. Let's just bring him right on. Kareem McKenzie, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. Well, I was going to say good afternoon, but good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you being here. Fun story. Back when I was doing other podcasting, I was just reaching out to people randomly, right? Kareem McKenzie is
Sure.
just a guy that I wanted to talk to because I was like, why would you not want to talk to Kareem McKenzie? Like, I had questions, like just generally besides, everything he did with the franchise, just generally because of how good you were at football. So the only way I was able to track down Kareem McKenzie was on LinkedIn. So I was like, forget it. It's not going to happen, but I shot him a message anyway. Back in April of 22, Kareem, being the nicest guy in the world, actually responds back this year and says, hey, sorry about that. But yeah, I'd love to do it, love to make it happen. So long story short, Kareem responded to his LinkedIn, and that's how we got here because he's just a really, really good dude. And Chris is correct. Sorry, Dr. Kareem McKenzie. Let me correct myself. How's it going, man?
Going pretty good. I mean, that's I think one of the annoyances right now is, the ideal of I'm future doctor, still in that future tense right now because the recruitment for participants trying to complete the dissertation process has been very slow, slower than I think anybody on my dissertation committee thought it would be, and something that I've had to be very patient with. And, you know, having to see your email, I recognize that on LinkedIn, I wasn't as active as I had been previously since I started the doctoral program. So I literally had some, you know, texts in there that were maybe 10 years old. I didn't respond to. I'm like, I need to be better and more proactive at that. So I said, let me go ahead and reach out and make sure that I reconnect with individuals who reached out to me, recognizing that, there is a bit of reconnection there to go ahead and make sure that I'm still prevalent within the world and not just a former has-been or whatever you want to call it.
Oh no, man, you're legendary. So I don't think anyone's ever going to call you has been, and it's legitimate. Like your story is pretty cool. If we just quickly, and I mean, you're better off to tell it, but just the knowledge I have, even for football, didn't you only play 2 years at Willingboro? I mean, you're a local Jersey guy, right? Born in Trenton, raised in Willingboro,
Right.
went to Willingboro High School, but you only really played 2 years of football. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. 2 years of football. My head coach at the time, Tyrone Belford, uh, had to literally make sure I didn't leave school prior to practice because it wasn't something that I was really interested in per se. And he was very integral in convincing me that it was a viable route to college. And I said, you know what? Coming from a single parent home, it kind of made sense for me at that point in time. And I said, well, let's give it a shot. And the rest is history, so to speak.
Yeah, excellent. So you did 2 years. You end up at Penn State. How did that go about? So for a guy who never really played football, wasn't interested, now I'm doing 2 years. How does that whole recruitment scenario take place? What were the other offers? How did you end up at Penn State?
Literally, one of the things that boded well in my favor, I guess what you could say, was at that time, a lot of the coaches communicated, well, at least my head coach at that time communicated, Coach Belford said, you can't coach size. And that was one of the things that was in my favor, being that I think at the time, probably 6'5", 330 pounds as a high school senior, 6'5", 6'6", whatever it was. Now that I'm older, a little bit shrinking, whatever it is. But still being a larger frame, you can teach technique, right? But you can't necessarily teach size. And I think that's one of the main things that drew a lot of individuals to me, in that they had sort of a buildable frame they could work from. And I got offers from pretty much every school out there that you can think about, whether it be UCLA, University of Washington, everywhere and anywhere pretty much reached out to me. And the decision for me boiled down to the ability for my family to enjoy in seeing me play. That was very big for me, I'm sorry. And one of the things that's have been constant throughout my life is being a family type person and making sure that I'm able to go ahead and enjoy those successes and those different experiences with my family.
And that's awesome. You get to keep it, more family based, local, if you will, or relatively, because Penn State's kind of like in the middle of nowhere, and it's not super super close, but it's a drive, right? You can drive there, you'll be fine. So your time at Penn State, goes, was the NFL a path for you? How did that kind of when did that start creeping up into your mind? Who started putting that seed there for you?
I don't think it really crept into my mind until my senior year, not my senior, but my junior year, when I saw the fanfare and the level of um, excitement around the guys that came before me. LeVar Arrington, of course, was in my recruiting class. We had, Lord, I'm forgetting the man's name now. He played for a couple years. Courtney Brown, a great defensive end, and you just saw the impact. And the scouts were around. They were coming to the university, looking at the players, scouting, going to the pro day for those guys that left before us. Of course, Brandon Short and other players. Curtis Enos, of course, years before. So there was a lot of involvement with the scouts. And I think it's sort of the same thing that happened for me there, in that I was exposed to, and other teams had exposure to me as a player. And I think that's one of the things that is important to understand, is that when you have a player that comes from any environment, I don't care if it's high school, college, whatever it is, when there's an opportunity to showcase your talent and or to at least have an opportunity to go to the next level, you have to take advantage of it, so to speak. And I think it was one of the important aspects for me to go ahead and make certain that I played well, that I improved as a player, and that I at least had an opportunity to have a career in the NFL if it would be one.
Right. So you go through all these different ranks, different processes, if you will. What was the combine like? What are those interviews like? Give us a little bit behind the scenes as an individual, a young kid, not maybe fully sure what to expect. What was that process like for you?
Combine is the closest I could equate it to in terms of being a meat market, right? You're going there, and all the teams that are quote unquote interested in you, if you're available at the pick that they have, they're going to take a look at you, right? So you're going to do an interview with, I did interviews with Miami, Indianapolis, bunch of other teams, the Giants, and different organizations. And literally, that's the first chance they have an opportunity to see you up close and have you be examined by their doctors. And whatever injuries you may have had or different little um, things that were going on with you physically, they have an opportunity to see it firsthand for themselves. And literally, it's going through the same examination, you know, about 32 teams, so to speak, because they're not going to trust the word of another doctor per se. They're going to want to do their own due diligence and make certain that they verify and or validate what they see. And it was just a whirlwind of activity that you really didn't sleep. I don't think I got any decent rest while I was there, because of course you're going to a meeting with this team, you're sitting down with that team, and it's just a whirlwind of activity. And the next thing you know, after that, 24, 48-hour period, you're back to your university, wherever it was you came from. So it was just a whirlwind of activity. And I remotely remember who it was I did interviews with, and the experience itself of running the 40 and all. I couldn't tell you. The cone drill, I don't even recall.
Sure. So you have those interviews, that processes, you're back on campus. It probably felt like a whirlwind when you finally sat down and got to maybe reflect a little bit or just give it a little bit of time. What was kind of going through your mind, like between the athlete, the individual, all these different pieces, because you're made up of obviously the different pieces of who you are. So what was going through your mind of all those different branches?
I have to be honest, and this is actually the first time I've actually revisited those experiences.
Really?
I never thought about it until you asked that question. That is the first genuine original question I've ever had. I think in my experience as a collegiate athlete, as a professional athlete now, unemployed. I don't say retired because retirees get pension, right? I don't get one yet, but yeah, I've not really reflected on that experience, and that's something that I think will come about here, because of course you asked that question, and
Sure.
that's something I don't think many people have reflected upon. That transitional period of going from being a collegiate athlete to being potentially a professional athlete. So I'm gonna have to write that one down. That's a good one. I've
So
not thought about
maybe
that.
maybe we get to circle back at some point when you get to think about it. Because I would actually love to know that when you get to reflect as again an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, you're about to bridge this gap. where your mind is again as a person, family oriented, just started playing high school, got the eyes on all these different pieces. I mean, what does that kind of really feel like in your head when you sit down and go, here's the kind of position I am, how did I get here? So I'm always curious about how people kind of evaluate themselves and what's going on around them kind of before and after. So now, the time comes. Did you have any inklings? Did you have an agent? Was it internal? If you did, what was being sold to you, I would say?
Pretty much at that time, it was via the experience of the players prior to me. LeVar Arrington had a great agent in Kevin Carl Poston, and that's who I ultimately chose to represent me. And it's something that I don't think, um, well, I can't say I don't think about it. I know specifically I did not regret the decision because it was a great relationship and they were really in tune to who I was as an individual. And they weren't the types of individuals to really bug you and or nag you about certain things. They would just tell you what it was. And I really appreciated the fact that they were all about education, because I think at that point in time between the two brothers, they might have had something like 9 degrees between the two of them, and that's something that really I appreciated at that point in time because it was about business and they had a lot of great players. They had Charles Woodson, they had Orlando Pace. Um, they had a lot of great players, and for me to be represented by that same caliber of agent, I thought was a great choice for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got the agency now, drafts is approaching. What are you being told about what the expectation is? What do you personally think? Again, back to a little bit reflection, right? You see the guys around you, your peers, if you will, or your competition, depending on your mentality. How did you feel about the group you were going in with, and where you kind of fit in that pact?
Pretty much, it was known, I think, at that time that it was going to be a high round pick. Maybe second round, maybe third round, because of course, during that season, we didn't do well as a team. I think that was the first time in however many years that Penn State didn't go to a bowl game. So I was literally home during bowl season. This was the first time I was ever home during the winter break and didn't have to prepare and or play a game. So really going into the preparation for the combine, preparing for pro day, and just trying to put my best foot forward, understanding that for myself I was going to be at home with my family, of course, again. And whenever I got that call, I got that call, whenever it was. And it was a tedious and anxious day because it took some time. I didn't sit there and watch TV per se to see who was up being picked because, that's just like torture. You're sitting there
Sure.
wondering, is it going to be me? Is it going to be me? And you see who's being picked in the first round, second round. And I think my uncle at that time, who since passed away, said, let's go for a walk. So we went ahead, went for a walk, and came back. And I eventually got the call from the New York Jets that I was the 79th pick in the third round.
What was your reaction? Like, if you can think about what did that feel like when you finally get that? It's like, this is where I'm going. Especially being a local kid, right? It's not like you're going to Cali, you're not flying out. You're literally going up north, probably 90 minutes.
Right. So at that time, it was, okay, the Jets. Okay, well, I have an opportunity to have a career, right? And I have an opportunity to go ahead and make a substantial amount of money that I couldn't make as a first year intern, student, or employee anywhere else. So really just taking advantage of that opportunity. And number two, it's literally at Medellin Stadium, right? So it's like you said, 90 minutes from the house. So literally, again, staying within this area, and I think that's a common theme throughout it all, is I never had to leave New Jersey, so to speak, right, with the tri-state area, and literally it's something to where my family could, see me, visit with me, and be around, or be within a close drive to me. Should I want to come home, or whatever the case may be, and that's something that I was grateful for, having the opportunity to actually go home and visit with family and keep up with everybody to a certain extent and just enjoy that process.
You had mentioned LeVar Arrington. Now,
Hmm.
I don't want to skip over the Jets because we're going to talk about that because that's a big deal where you get to that. But you got to be teammates with him very, very briefly. Signed with the
Hmm.
Giants. Giants gave him a big contract. Obviously, health played a big factor where LeVar didn't have obviously long career we all wish he would have had with the Giants because he was very productive when he was at Washington. Even for a brief year or so, what was that like having somebody you played in college with also literally on your pro team when you were with the Giants?
I think it was a bit of a difference in that it was sort of a reconnection, but at the same time, it's not as closely knit as you would have in a college environment, right? Because at
Mhm.
least, with the college environment, you're hanging out with one another, it's on the same campus, you're in the same location and different things. Whereas as a professional athlete, he has a family, you're in the building for however long it is, and you genuinely just want to go ahead and go home and be with somebody different, right? You don't want to hang around with everybody all the time because literally every moment you have of the day that you're in that building, it's all about football, it's all about business and different things of that nature. So it was a reconnection of sorts, but at the same time, being that it's at the professional level, it's not as intimate, I would say, as you would
Right.
have on a college environment.
Got it. So it's Jets time, right? You
Mhm.
ride up, you go to the Jets, you have a 4 year there, you play out your contract, you have a 4 year there. How did that time go? Why did they not re-sign you now? Or why did you not potentially want to resign? I'm not saying it went either or direction, but how did you feel like your time went with the Jets? Because you obviously played well. It's not as if you did not play well. You played very, very well in the league. You were sought after. Why did the Jets not want to keep you around per se?
That's a great question that, of course, they didn't share that information with me. They didn't offer me a contract beyond that franchise year, so to speak. They didn't offer me anything. They let me hit the open market and never gave me a reason as to why they didn't want to sign me at that time. I was intent upon being a New York Jet for my career at that time and really just looking at, where do I move in Long Island? I was of that mindset of, okay, so if it is a big contract, like where do I move now? Because I think when I first moved to Long Island, I was out there in CI, Central Islip, and I had a townhouse. It was like, okay, well, I can probably afford something a little bit better than this, right? Maybe get a new car or something of that nature. And it just never materialized, right? So the first day that free agency hits, the phone's ringing off the hook, and it's Green Bay, it's the New York Giants, and all these other different teams. And I said, well, let me just go ahead and visit with whomever and see what it is. And talking with
Sure.
my agent, you have these different teams and see how it is, see how you like the environment, whatever it is, and we'll keep tabs on them. We'll actively work on a contract and see who we can get the deal, the deal done with, and it ended up being the New York Giants.
Yeah, that's interesting that they offered you, I guess, a pseudo franchise tag or a 1 year. I mean, you're 25, you're going towards the prime. Again, you're playing well because obviously offers are coming in. You're sought after. It's not as if you're just riding pine and nobody wants Kareem McKenzie. People are on the phone, they're interested. So I find it odd considering when you were with the Jets, there was success there. They won what out of the 4 years you were there. I think you guys only had one losing season. So
Yeah, and that was the
it was
it was
03.
it was '03, right? So I think that's one of the quote unquote curses of the Jets, so to speak. The talent that they actually draft, are they able to actually keep it to a certain extent? Because there's a lot of players that you look at, even prior to my getting there, that they were able to go to other teams and find success, right? And of course, that being Herm Edwards' first couple of years there, um, didn't necessarily did I necessarily fit into the framework of what they were trying to do offensively, right? But I mean, uh, it worked out well for me. I mean, you can't really just cry about two Super Bowls. I mean,
Oh, I
I'm never
would.
going to go ahead and say, well, I wish it would have went a different way.
Sure. So, like you said, the phone calls happen. Walk me through a little about how those offers go, how negotiation goes. What is your involvement there? Did you leave it to your agent? What was your involvement when those kind of calls are going on?
At that point, I'm of the mindset to leave it to the experts. I've
Okay.
never negotiated a contract. I don't know what the contracts are like. So it was all negotiated by my agent and basically gave me a thumbs up. This is a pretty good deal. This is the best deal. What do you think about it? And I said, okay. So we went ahead and got it done. And literally within 24 hours of me visiting with the Giants, I was signed to the team.
Now, was that the best offer? Because again, I don't know what you recall it doing. Obviously, it was a while ago, but I do recall it being, I think, 7 years, 35 or 37 mil at that time, which
7 years, 42. It was 7 years, 42 million.
7 years, 42 million, which at that time, 7 year contracts weren't being handed out. Like the reason I remember you so much is literally because of your contract as well. It's like 7 years. Who gets those kind of deals? And I think LeVar Arrington also got a similar 6 or whatever, but again, he didn't get through it. You had a 7 year deal and you played through it. I don't even think that's something that happens in the NFL. People don't complete 3 year contracts. How much pride do you take as an athlete and individual to sign a 7 year commitment at a pro level and play out the entire contract? And I think you missed maybe 2 games.
I definitely missed more than 2 games. 'Cause I remember there was a knee injury. There was also there was some other things here and there that happened, but to go ahead and to play 7 years and ultimately have an 11-year career altogether, um, the way I approached it and looked at it was every year was an opportunity, right? You have an opportunity to go ahead and play football, and understanding that at any point in time they can cut you, you pretty much know that you have to constantly show and prove that you're worth what they're paying you at the same time. And it was fortunate for myself in that they did a great year. I'm sorry, they did a great job. Ernie Accorsi and staff did a great job in assembling the missing pieces that they had at that time into a team that ultimately would go on to win our first Super Bowl in 2007 and the second one in 2011.
Yeah, so you missed 7 games. So you played 105 out of 112, which is still, again, in a 7 year deal. That's saying once a year. I think anybody would sign up for that today in a heartbeat to
Oh,
have,
definitely.
a rock of the line. Like I said, since you've been gone, we haven't had a right tackle.
Well, you've had right tackles. I
We
mean,
haven't had any good right tackles. Let me make the statement. We haven't
okay, well, well, that's a
had
different
any good right
qualifier, right?
tackles.
That's a different. That's a
Like,
different.
literally, if we go into the memory bank and say, when's the last time we had a legitimate right tackle that was good? It's you, and that was a dozen years ago, just about.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have a great group of guys. I think now that one of the things, and people always talk about this, and they always say, well, what's wrong with the Giants? And I always tell them that you have to understand that football, when I played it, in college and at the professional level, there was a different environment in terms of practice, right? You had 2-a-days. Sometimes I can recall being with the Jets, there were 3-a-days, whereas now literally there's one practice a day for training camp. So the level of experience that players have coming into the NFL is not at the same level, right? And also, you got to keep in mind that the offensive line that I played with as a core group were a bunch of older guys as well. And it took some time for us to develop because I got there in 2005. We didn't win our first Super Bowl until 2007. So we literally had 2 to 3 years of playing with one another. And ultimately, I forget how many games the same starting five played in, which was, I think, outdone by the Jets at some point, but not at the same level of accomplishment. But it took a long time for us to develop as a core group and to play with one another to have that semblance of playing as a well-oiled machine. So I tell the Giants fans today to go ahead and be patient and understand that it's a group of guys that they have to work with one another, and at the same time they have to have that experience. So it helps if you can stay healthy and stay on the football field and play with one another and get that experience, right? I mean, practice, everything looks great in practice, right? Because it's supposed to. But in the game time environment, playing in a tougher environment like, down in Dallas, playing against these different teams that are defensive oriented. And that's one of the things I think other individuals don't take into account as well is with defense, it's pretty much easier to play well early because it's simple. Do your assignment and that's it. Whereas on offense, it's more of a symphony, right? All the pieces have to fit together cogently to form that beautiful piece of music. And on defense, one guy can mess up, but it's not going to necessarily blow up the play. But on offense, that can definitely happen.
Now, are you still kind of clued in or locked into the Giants? And if you are, to what extent?
I like the current, layout of my house, so I don't watch football too often because it's still a sense of that excitement and that sense of frustration as well. So I watch it, but I watch it sparingly because I like my blood pressure to stay at a relatively normal level if possible. Um, and I don't necessarily want to get into the rhyme and reason of watching football while I work out because that would be the most ideal environment for me to go ahead and watch a full game, right? So I watch it sparingly and I kind of just turn it off when I've had enough and I don't want to get too excited and or upset.
Sure. I mean, there's not a lot of excitement happening anyway. The last dozen years have been mainly a lot of sadness for Giants fans, minus, the one offs. Oh my God, maybe there's something. And then it turns into nothing the following season, which has happened twice. But more or less, it's just you're not missing out on much other than sadness. Um, why, what can you pinpoint, if anything, outside looking in on what's happened in the past dozen years with this franchise, why they're stuck in this kind of a rut, if you will, where things just can't go right in really any direction?
I wish I knew. I wish I had an answer as to what's going on. And honestly, I cannot tell you. I can only approach it from the perspective of being an offensive lineman and offensive line play and how that unit works in terms of the other aspects. Um, it's a matter of trusting in the process, the vision the coach has, the vision the GM has, and getting those pieces that they feel are necessary to help the team win. And at the same time, too, you got to have players on the field. So I mean, injuries aside, those are things that make it difficult to compete. And that's one of the things I know. And if you really look at it in terms of the NFL, generally the two teams that are the healthiest are the teams that make it to the Super Bowl. They're able to compete because those players get that experience, they get that time on the field, and they're able to go ahead and improve as a player. They're able to hone their skills and develop as a player in the season in and of itself.
Fair enough. So let me ask this question to you as a player, right? If you're in Evan Neal, 6'7", 340, big prospect, has potential, has tools, the translation isn't really happening. How much of that is the individual? How much of that is the coaching? How much is it, 60-40, 70-30 cohesion, symphony, like you've mentioned before? Basically, how much onus goes on the coach to develop versus the prospect or the player themselves?
Well, I can't say and give you a percentage because I don't know all the facets of this diamond, right? I don't know if he's playing healthy or not. I don't know. There could be some injuries that are bothering him or some different things that we don't know about that, of course, the training staff will be aware of, the coaching staff and different things will be aware of. Um, hand placement, using your hands, that's something that is a big part of being an offensive lineman and giving yourself the opportunity to kind of catch up with the level and caliber of players that you're going to have out there. So that would be one of the things that is important. And number two, it's footwork. I mean, you have to constantly practice and work at being an offensive lineman. I mean, I look at myself on film now, not now, but looking at my previous tape now, I see, I'm like, how in the heck did I make it as a right tackle in the NFL for 11 years? And I had the worst kick slide ever. I always had a drop step where I was always putting my foot in the bucket and basically starting behind somebody. Somehow, some way, I made it work. And I'm in awe of the players and the footwork that they have because they're so much smoother than I was, right? And that goes back to my career in college where I played both right tackle and left tackle, right? Because back then Penn State was a short side, long side. So if we wanted to run a play to the left side that went to the right originally, it was 35 Bob. We go ahead and call it 35 Bob, 34 Bob, or whatever. And I would just switch sides and we just run it either way. I think that kind of hindered me to a certain extent in being able to really get the necessary experience to kind of not have those different uh, inefficiencies as a player. So it's something that I would definitely work on now. But you have to work at your craft, and I'm I think about players like Larry Bird or Magic Johnson, and they talk about how much they work to improve their game. I think it was either Larry or Magic that talked about in the summertime shooting 500 jump shots a day. I'm like, that's a dedication to a game and improvement that I don't know if I possess that, because to sit there and to shoot 500 jump shots on your own, to keep track of it and just to do those types of things, is that's a whole other level of professionalism that you understand. That's what it takes to be great, right? There's a difference between being good and being great. And those, I think, are the subtle differences and nuances that develop. And let's keep in mind, too, that this is Evan Neal's what? Third, no, second year?
Second year, I think he's missed. He missed what 5 or 6 games last season, and he's going to be ending up missing at least his fourth game now, if I'm counting right. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a lot of different things that are hindering him and, um, basically slowing down that progress. So it's something that, I mean, it's going to take some time to develop as a player. And two, um, you can't get better if you're not on the field, and if he has injuries, I mean, let's go ahead and be honest about it. I mean, football is pretty much a 100% injury type of sport, because literally you're out there running into people day in and day out, right? So if he can get healthy, um, not to say he's not healthy now, but those different things, if he can stay healthy and stay on the field, I definitely look forward to seeing him play.
How hard is it playing in this media market? Now, you've only played in this media market between the Jets and the Giants. Did you feel a difference when you switched teams as far as dealing with the media, or was it more or less New York's New York?
New York is New York, I think, and it took a while to get rid of those comparisons of the differences between the Jets and the Giants, right? Because that was one of the first things. How much better are the Giants than the Jets? Man, who cares about the other team? This is where I'm at now. This is why do you need me to tell you how good this team is compared to that team? When it comes down to the stadium, it's 100 yards long by 54 yards wide. The team environments are different, the structure is different. And don't get me wrong, I mean, when you're talking about the New York Giants, one of the founding organizations for the NFL, bar none, right? And I'm thankful for my experience there. I mean, the Mara family, the Tish family, I mean, just what can I say? I mean, just first class all around, right? But in terms of the media market, if you don't play well, they're going to let you know. If you play good, they'll tell you, okay, you did all right. Until you get those accomplishments, until you're able to go ahead and get the Lombardi Trophy, to win a Super Bowl, to compete on a weekly basis, to vie for the NFC Championship, right? Those different things. It's going to be a tough market all around. And in this environment today, it's even worse because there's so many more outlets that have a perspective, and you have those Monday morning quarterbacks or those different individuals that they say, well, this is what they should do. Well, it's easy for you to say sitting back there and watching it, but to go ahead and put the work in necessary. And I always tell people, you see the game on Sunday, but the amount of work they put in Monday through Saturday, it's a lot, to only realistically have basically 3 to 4 minutes worth of actual playing the game itself. There's a lot of strategy into it, and there's a lot of an impact of being healthy and making certain that when you go out there, you're able to execute, right? So those are some of the different things that take place. And one of the main reasons why I didn't go into coaching, because I didn't want to put in those long hours. There was no, for myself, when I played, I watched, at least 3 games of the team we were facing to get an idea of what they did and how they do it. I don't want to continue that as a coach. I, I imagine they probably watch every game the team has played that season just to try and figure out ways in which to compete. And me, that's not for me at all.
I don't blame you. Not everyone can just sit there and do that aspect of it. Um, you played under Tom Coughlin. What was that coaching change like for you now, right? You come under his regime. We've all at least heard, some stories that have obviously been public. I'm sure there's a lot more. What was it like playing under Tom Coughlin? Are you surprised that he's not in the Hall of Fame yet? Because that's something that bothers me a lot, just based on his resume.
Well, first and foremost, I don't know the criteria for Hall of Fame. I mean, hell, I never even made it to a Pro Bowl, so I have no idea, right? But the main difference in particular, I think, is the sense of the rules, right? Being a stickler to the rules, being one to always have the ideal of, No, 5 minutes early, setting the clocks in the actual meeting rooms, the whole building 5 minutes early, things of that nature. And this ideal of making sure that we practice perfect, right? We get it right. We make sure that everything we're doing, there's a timeliness and an orderliness to it to make sure that we can be successful. And practicing those situations to make sure that if it should ever arise, we're prepared for it.
You win two. That first run in '07, what did that actually feel like as the season was going? When did you guys start going, okay, there's something here? I know we're playing well, winning, but when did that switch kind of go, huh?
I think for myself, it was when we got to the playoffs, right? Because first, having the opportunity to get into the playoffs was something that doesn't happen every year. And if you have a chance, if you have an opportunity to play and compete, all bets are off, right? Because it's not a sense of, well, if we lose this week, we can come back for next week. No, it's pretty much win, you're in. So I think everyone took that mindset of being able to go ahead and raise the level of play and just improve as the weeks went along. And as it came to fruition, it was like, well, wait a minute, we're literally about to go ahead and we have a chance to go to the Super Bowl, get into that NFC Championship game. So it's like, well, okay, well, we can definitely do this. We've gone ahead and we've beaten the teams that have beaten us and previously in the season, and we're kind of getting our payback, so to speak. So let's continue this ride. And there was a sense of excitement because being a player for myself, this is my first time ever being in those type of environments to where now you have the potential, you're one game away from a quarter, a half away from being in the NFC, in the NFL, in the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, and it's like, man, it's just a dream environment. It's surreal. You can't really believe it until you're actually there.
Outside looking in, a lot of us feel like that Patriot loss in that season, the regular season, was something of magnitude, something to hold that, hey, listen, they can hang with the best of the best. Did you guys take anything? We always say there's no moral victories in football. But did you guys take anything away from that game? Do you think that it maybe was a little bit of a catalyst, or hey, listen, it was what it was, and it wasn't really much of an impact? Did that game have any effect on the locker room in any form?
I think at that point there was an understanding that they got away with one. I think that had New England lost that game, there would have been a sense of, trepidation on their part. And I don't know, this is just me, offering my opinion, but they were on a Cinderella ride, right? No one could beat them. You had an earlier game in that season, I recall, with Baltimore, where they literally almost lost, but because of a timeout call or a missed timeout, whatever it was, they were able to go ahead and win. So they kind of were on a Cinderella ride where they could potentially go, undefeated for the season. And I think with that aspect and that mindset of, well, we were this close to a team that, you know, has been pretty much at that point blowing teams out earlier in the season. And that we literally had them down to the fourth quarter. And we said, you know what, we'll see them again. And that mindset and that belief and that confidence in our ability at that time to compete with anybody, I think was important as well.
Now, you said, it was a little bit of a revenge tour, right? You guys were facing teams again in the playoffs that had already taken you out or defeated you, and you guys were getting your revenge. When did the whole Jerry Jones Super Bowl ticket thing information get out? Did you guys know about that beforehand at all? Did it become
We
a
knew
thing?
we knew about that before the game. We
What
knew
was
about
the
that in the
reaction
locker room.
inside? What was the reaction inside the locker room? What was the raw reaction when that came out as information?
It was more so of, oh, really,
Yeah,
right? And I think it was, to put it in today's terms, and everyone knows this acronym, FAFO, right?
yeah.
And they definitely did that day.
That's great, man. I love that. Absolutely love that. So you beat them in Dallas again, 13 win team. Everyone you guys beat was, when it comes to win loss, one seed, two seed, top tier, whatever you want to call it. You guys played the best competition. It wasn't fluky. It wasn't anything. You guys grinded out. Sorry, you won. So you end up defeating Dallas, which was amazing for everyone involved. The next game, right, is going to be, what was the second game after Dallas?
The game after Dallas, I think was to go to the NFC Championship,
That was the
right?
NFC Championship. Yeah, week
Right.
one was
Week
Tampa.
one was Tampa Bay,
Tampa Bay,
right?
sorry,
Week
overlooked that
two
one. Tampa
was
Bay was week
Dallas.
two was Dallas. Week three, then you got the freezer game, right? Tom Coughlin looks like he's about to die on any given moment. It's freezing out. How do you guys function, by the way, as athletes? Do you just warm up over time? Or are you actually functioning in this weather?
Literally, that game, I think I used cayenne pepper. I put cayenne pepper in my shoes, put it
Did
on.
you?
Yeah, that was
Did
something
it
that
do
my
anything?
mother. It definitely heats you up. You definitely don't want to go ahead and put that on your skin because it will burn you. And that's something that I got from my mother as a young man. That was something that she told me about when I was out there, shoveling snow during the winter storms and blizzards. Put a little cayenne pepper in your shoes; it'll keep your feet warm. So literally, that's what I did. I went ahead and put on, a couple pairs of socks. Uh, I mistakenly, as didn't know any better, put on a pair of surgeon's gloves underneath my actual gloves, and because it was so cold, the perspiration didn't get out of the glove, and I actually got frostbite on my hands.
Oof.
So and literally, it was so cold outside that at that point, you're not trying to pass block. I was out there punching people, literally just punching with a balled up fist, trying to stay as warm as possible. And I recall distinctly, somehow, some way, I lost track of my helmet, and I had to use, oh my God, Kevin Booth's helmet for the actual field goal. And man, that helmet was, I could barely get it off. It was so cold outside. I think it was like negative 32 or something to that extent out there. And never, ever again in life will I ever be outside in that type of environment. You could not pay me to do it. It will never happen again.
Sure, once in a lifetime experience. Hey, it led down a great road, but
Definitely did.
definitely a one time. As that game is progressing, and everyone was just kind of battling to more or less kind of stay alive, right? That was a tough game. As it was going, what was happening with the confidence? Was it frustration? How were you guys feeling? Was it like, nope, we just need to stick to the plan. We're doing what we need to do.
I don't think you can be frustrated in that type of environment because the rewards are so great. You can't have a pity party in that moment because you still have an opportunity to win and get to that next level, which is ultimately, I think, everyone's goal as a kid who ever played football to play in a Super Bowl. So at
Absolutely.
that point, it's just, man, whatever it takes, we got to do, and that's what we did.
Yeah, you guys get the kick. You're going. It's Super Bowl time. Probably a really big high moment. That's obviously going to start tapering down as the game comes. What was the preparation like going into that game? Where was everyone mentally? Right, you got Michael Strahan. You got all these guys yourselves. Right? You got plenty of vets, young guys. Right, that '07 draft class with Ahmad Bradshaw was a good class to kind of bring some youth in. You guys got a lot of good pieces. How's everybody feeling? Did you feel a sense of pressure? Was it like, no, we were calm, we were steady, we were good? What was that preparation like?
I don't think it was any pressure at that point, right? Because as a player, I mean, this is it. I mean, it's when you win or you lose. There's no second place, so to speak. You have a great opportunity, a once in a lifetime opportunity that a lot of players prior to you never had the opportunity to experience, right? So enjoy it, do all the preparation necessary. And I think one of the great things about that bye week, so to speak, before the NFL takes you down to the Super Bowl site, is that you do all that preparation the week before, so it's a normal environment as it would be for any other game, whether it be home or away. You're in your home stadium, you're practicing, doing everything you need to do, and by the time you get down to the Super Bowl site, it's just polish. Polishing it up, making it look good, making sure you're getting everything you need to get, and that you have a level of comfort with whatever the team may throw at you, right? And making sure you don't do something stupid because, of course, Super Bowl environment, you have family, and I think they did a great job of making sure that everyone understood there may be some family involvement, there may be some family time here, but remember why you're here, right? We're here to play a game and win, and ultimately, that's what we did.
I mean, you got like the ultimate revenge, right? Not only do you beat the Patriots, you kill the undefeated streak, one of the biggest upsets you'll ever see. What did that feel like when it finally sunk in that we won?
That's a great question. I can't recall, honestly. I really can't recall. And to be 100% truthful, I've not yet watched that game through its entirety. I've seen bits and pieces on when the NFL replays it, when Super Bowl comes up and different, but to actually sit down and watch that game again, I've not done so. All I can recall is that the first possession, I think we had the ball for something like 9 minutes, um, which is it was an eternity, right? Because we're down there in Arizona. It's hot. You're not used to it being hot, and just trying to hold it together and make sure that whatever you do, you don't screw up, right? And there was some key plays in there that um, definitely fell into our favor that ultimately help us to win that game.
Sure. You get the ultimate win. Next year, you guys start off dominant. What a dominant team. Um, and we all know what happened in '08, right? You guys are the number one seed. We have the whole Plaxico incident take place. It's one of the biggest what ifs as far as I'm concerned because, I mean, we were convinced it was back to back. I'm sure the
Mhm.
locker room felt that. We all, even as fans, I would say, were just convinced that this has to be back to back. It was dominant. You guys were blowing teams out. I remember Eli not playing quarters and halves just because of the way it was being done. Like the offense was dominant, the defense was dominant. When that incident took place, what happened inside the locker room? Did everything just kind of all the air just got let out?
When I say with the incident, which incident are you speaking of?
The Plaxico Burst incident.
That one, um, I don't know because I mean, in that situation, it's just like you have a sense of general worry for your teammate, right? Because you don't know what's going on or what's happening, and first and foremost, respecting that sense of privacy, right? Because we all go through things, we all do things, we all make mistakes in life, and just making certain that um, you're hopeful that everything turns out okay, right? And that's a situation that I'll leave it where it is and move on to the next subject.
Sure, absolutely. '09, you guys start out pretty well, tapers off. I think won 9 games. 2010, you guys are one of the few teams that won 10 games and actually didn't make the playoffs. Had a little bit of a struggle towards the end. 2011 comes. Statistically, everything's bad, right? Statistically speaking, the run game is bad, the pass blocking is bad, the defense is bad. Statistically, everything's bad. How do you guys end up winning a Super Bowl? What happens there?
I think in that instance, it was a sense of teams not really worrying about us, quote unquote. It was just like, well, they're not good statistically. I mean, they got a bunch of older guys that just aren't really playing well, and we happened to get hot at the right moment. We heated up and were able to play well when it really counted. And we were able to take advantage of that. And we had, of course, quite a few players that were in that 2007 Super Bowl team that were able to go ahead and and be encouraging and motivational, and also some other players that came to the team in intro role, just being able to come in and contribute to that team as well. And it was just we were just hitting on all cylinders at that point in time.
And then seems like the never-ending revenge tour between the Patriots and the Giants. Like, here we are, round two again. What was that like? Was it like again?
It's like, are you serious? Like again, the Patriots, and the difference between the '07 and the 11 game is at that point, I'm just like, man, let's just go ahead and play the game. I mean, forget about the fanfare, forget about the week off. Let's just go play because at that point, you're just exhausted, right? I mean, I think that was maybe the 24th or 25th game of the year. And I recall driving home during the playoffs, and I actually fell asleep at a stoplight. I'm like, listen, this is, I'm just exhausted. I just want to go ahead, get some rest, play this game, get to the off season so I can get some genuine rest because it's such a high. And as the playoffs go along, it takes more and more to compete because it raises a level, right? Because the stakes are higher as you get deeper into the playoffs. And that physical and emotional toll, I mean, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot.
So you beat him again. You beat him
Mhm.
again. How did that feel? Is there now? So I'm sure each one is different. I can't say do you like one over the other as far as a champion. You're a two-time champion. I'm sure you love both. But is there one memory that kind of just sticks out from both of them that just kind of holds a little place?
The one memory distinctly is that last touchdown we were able to score, and we didn't want Ahmad to score. Right, it was just like go down
The
without,
Bob
and he had
Bradshaw one where he just kind of
he
stops and falls in.
stopped the fall saying like we did not want to give them the opportunity to go ahead and get the ball again because we just knew Tom Brady and his record of being able to make fourth quarter comebacks, and we didn't want it to be their revenge tour, right? But
Sure.
everything happened to work in our favor again, and we were able to go ahead and raise that trophy.
Yeah, and I'm sure it felt just as good as that first time. Now, you spent your career with probably the best years of Eli's career. Tell me a little bit about Eli as a quarterback leader, all that good stuff. I mean, some of the throws you saw, the Manningham throw is one probably my favorite throw of all time, just in football, not just the Super Bowl. It was just such a great throw and catch. Let's give Mario Manningham a lot of credit for coming up with that
Definitely.
catch as well as the throw. That was amazing. You've lived through the helmet catch. You've been through two or three really big Giants moments. So as that career goes on, how do you feel about Eli when you first met him and then throughout his career? How did you feel about having him as a quarterback?
I mean, he's a quiet individual, not the real rah rah, shish boom bah type of guy. Just goes
Mhm.
out there, does his job, and if a guy makes a mistake, hey, let's move on to the next play. Doesn't complain a lot because I can remember that the NFC Championship game in San Francisco. I mean, he took a lot of hits and he didn't grumble, didn't complain, just carried on as usual, right? And after my career was over, the ways in which he handled um, being the backup quarterback. That just tells you how he is as an individual and his level of professionalism. I think Dave Deal talked about it. Double D talked about the ways in which he just okay, well, I'm not a starting quarterback, and he was there to help whoever was replacing him prepare that week, right? So a great quarterback doesn't complain a lot, and definitely one of the better quarterbacks, I think, going throughout his whole career. And you just look at his body of work, what he's done. I think it speaks for itself.
Yeah, there's really no middle ground when it comes to Eli. When it comes to, I guess, just I don't want to say fans, but analysts as well. Like just the general football audience. He either is, hey, that's a Hall of Famer versus no chance. So there's really rarely ever in between. Do you believe, as a former teammate, you can be objective about your opinion on Eli, or is it kind of like, no, I'm naturally biased anyway?
Well, I mean, it depends on how delusional you are, right? The sense
Sure.
of can you be objective, right? And I don't think, in all honesty, we can truthfully be objective when we've been so close in relation to an individual and we've been a part of their success, right? It's difficult to do so. And to say he's not a Hall of Fame quarterback in comparison to who, right? Who are we comparing him to? Because that's one of the main things is, well, who do we compare him to say a reason why he's not, or a reason why he is? And again, I don't know the requirements for Hall of Fame. I have no vote in it, of course. But when you look at some of the quarterbacks that are in there as a Hall of Famer, how do his stats stack up versus theirs, right? And is that a fair comparison? No, but at the same time, we have to compare him in current times. So who are we comparing him with to say that he's not or that he is a Hall of Fame quarterback? That's an
Sure.
argument I'll leave for those individuals who lose sleep of those different arguments and conversations. I'm a little
Sure. You
bit
don't have to be
wiser. It doesn't matter to me, because of course I played around some Hall of Fame players before, Curtis Martin and other players and different individuals, and the level of work and attention to detail that they have, he shares some of those same qualities.
Sure. Who was your favorite Giants teammate or teammates? Right? I don't want to put you on the spot where it's one guy. Do you just have a group of people, or is it just O line sticks together?
You know what? I have to say my team, man. I have to say the team because it's a general, I think, understood thing that it's a brotherhood that we're all out there striving to be better. We're competing towards one goal. Of course, my offensive linemen are going to be the closest to me because those are the guys that I'm in the room with every day. Um, and we're the ones out there that we know who's doing what, we know the weaknesses of one another, and we know who needs help and who doesn't need help in certain situations, right? We know each other better than anybody else on that field. So, of course, I'm gonna be close, but I would say the team overall, there's not one person that I can say that if a situation happened and they were in trouble, I wouldn't be, oh, they need go help them out. So, oh, you know what, that guy, I don't like him. That the hell with him. That's not a situation I think I would ever be in. especially with any of the teammates I've had.
Sure, understood. Antonio Pierce,
Hmm.
right? Great player for the Giants. Head coach now, doing pretty well. Are you surprised about Antonio Pierce's trajectory, if you will?
I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised because when you think about the position he played as the middle linebacker, being the on the field coach for the defense, and some of the things I saw him do as a player, I mean, I couldn't be happier for him. And hopefully that title interim is taken off of his name, and he is the head coach. You know, they do eventually hire him as the head coach. Um, and you see how well the players are reacting to him, how well they are playing. You see the level of interaction during the games, and I think it bodes well in his favor because he's been a player at that level. He knows what it takes. He knows the ins and outs, and he's done it at all levels, right? He's been a head coach at the high school level. He's coached at the collegiate level. He's been at all three levels as a player and as a coach. So he knows the ins and outs. So when a player and or coach of that caliber says something, it holds weight because they've been there. They're not going to ask you to do something they've not done. They're realistic in their expectations and the ways in which they communicate with the players. Because I remember one thing that Herm Edwards said distinctly that I always remember. He said, I'll treat you all fairly, but not the same. And you have to respect that. You have to respect it because there's a level of professionalism that players who came before you have earned, right? So the same things that, you know, pardon me, the same things that Mike can do, Justin Tuck can't do because Mike's played for 15 years. Justin's a rookie. He's coming in 2 years, three. So there's certain things that you can do as a player that you can respect that you can't treat them all the same, but you'll be treated fairly. And I think that's one of the things that he's doing. I can only conjecture here, um, but you see the response that they're having, and it looks like they're genuinely excited to be on that field and to play for him.
Sure, absolutely. What was it like going against that D line that you got to practice against? Strahan, Tuck, Humanura, young JPP. What
Mhm.
was that like? And then generally in practice, who was the hardest person for you to go up against?
I would say it wasn't in practice. I would say training camp was where the real work was done because during the season, you don't want to hurt anybody. You don't want to get hurt. During training camp is when all bets are off. That's where you can really try anything and everything. And the one thing I detested about Mike is that forearm shiver he did. He'd do like that window wash move and do a one arm stab. I absolutely hated it because you didn't know at what point he would take off and just push you back, right? Because specifically, I knew. I mean, this is Mike Strahan. I mean, guys got like he's legit going to go ahead and sack the quarterback at least 2 or 3 times a game if you're not careful. Because I remember my time as a Jet just in the preseason, all the coaches were like, well, this is Mike Strahan and so forth, so you got to be careful and all the different things you need to watch out for. And to actually play against him on a daily basis, right, in practice, just go out there and have fun and just do different things, just try stuff out. And I think the general ideal that we're all working with one another and trying to get better is how we were able to play so well on Sundays because we were able to go out there and tell them, okay, I see this when you're doing this, or when you do this, I do that. So it was a chess match every day to get better. And of course, if you're having a bad day, well, everyone wants to go ahead and line up over you, right? They want to go ahead and get a piece, so to speak. And yeah, it was just fun. It was just fun. I generally enjoyed my time with the Jets and the Giants, more so with the Giants, of course, because I had more experience there. And there's more fond memories also.
Sure, and you reached the pinnacle of your career at that point, so naturally it just makes sense. So, two more questions. I'll let you go because you've been so gracious with your time and genuine with all your responses. So I genuinely appreciate that. First question is, tell us a little about what you're doing today. Tell us a little bit about, you spoke about your dissertation and everything. Give us a little bit of window. What is Kareem's life like today?
Well, my life today is inclusive of maintaining my sanity and peace. I go to the gym for a couple hours and work out and try to stay functionally. mobile, right? Because one thing they don't tell you as a retired, older football player, those injuries that you're able to bounce back from, yeah, they come back around, and they definitely do a number on you, right? So just trying to make sure functionally I'm healthy, keep my weight at a stable place, and I'm doing well. Doing my research, trying to find research participants, volunteers for my dissertation, in which I'm looking at the the impact of adolescent substance use, the inefficiencies within the process of assessment, and also the clinical tools that are used and dedicated towards that purpose. So, trying to reach out to as many people as possible who can provide me with their perspectives on what we can do to improve and hopefully prevent substance use, right? I mean, and I use the word prevent, and I say that in quotation marks because one of the things I've learned being a former clinician who ran an actual program for substance use for a school system and working in that environment, uh, the issues that today's youth deal with are numerous. And I have to say that social media is an impact, and also the amount of influence that our young people are influenced by. So, trying to understand what are some of the things that we can do better to help our young people deal with whatever issues it is that they are facing, and also hopefully giving them more positive minded coping mechanisms to where they're not dependent upon substance use to go ahead and deal with life. And I was having a conversation the other day with somebody, I think it was my dentist, and they were talking about, oh, well, coping mechanisms. I said, well, if you think about it, a lot of people have a substance use issue. They don't know about it because you look at alcohol. How many people utilize alcohol to unwind and do different things? And they had a bad day, they have a couple of drinks and things of that nature. Well, that's what it is like for our youth, except they can't legally buy alcohol. So what do? A lot of kids smoke weed or whatever the case may be. And it's because of something, right? They're not doing it necessarily because they're bored, but they're trying to either distract or numb themselves from what it is that they're struggling with. And I want to hopefully address those issues and hopefully help young people not depend upon substance use because the landscape today with substances, I mean, you talk about fentanyl, pills, Percocets, and different things. It's a scary landscape for young people. And necessarily, would I want to grow up in today's environment? No, not at all. Because I think as a young person myself, first thing we had to worry about was weed. And then when you look at the landscape of what's available now, uh, I think the research has said that the weed today is about 400 times stronger than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So we're talking about something that is definitely life altering. And I'm hopeful that we can change that for a lot of young people.
Sure, and that's amazing. Lastly, what would you like to be remembered as professionally and personally?
Professionally, football wise,
Yep,
or
really.
man, just a guy that played right tackle, plain and simple, did his job. Simple. I don't need any accolades. I just did my job. That's it. I think for myself, especially with everything that's happened over the past 3 years, both my parents passing away and different friends and family members that have died. I'm not big on accolades and different things, right? It's about how I can impact and help people today and what I've been able to do with the platform that I have, right? And that I think is more important than anything else because you want to leave a lasting legacy more so than just what you've done, but it's a body of work that can contribute and others can build off of and hopefully impact the future for the better.
That's amazing, and I definitely think you'll be remembered positively in all aspects of life. You seem like a very genuine guy. So I want to once again thank you wholeheartedly. I know your schedule's insanely crazy. You're working really hard towards your doctorate, and I'm looking forward to when that takes place for you. And just once again, thank you for your time. And man, if you could suit up, feel free. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. If you can suit up and even give me 10% of what you were, I got five on it, right? I can get you back in the building maybe.
There is no way on God's green earth that it will ever happen. No way.
No
Not,
chance.
and just to give a story, right? I did fantasy football a couple weeks ago, and I fell and hit the ground, and that was my body reminded me, you're not 30 anymore. You're not in your 20s anymore. You're in your 40s. You don't do those things anymore. We don't do that anymore. My body, mind over body. No, my
Yep.
body said, no, mind, tell him to don't ever do that again. And you don't have to worry about me. I will not even run across the street now.
Mm. Well, I guess I'll just have to keep at it. Maybe I'll get lucky.
Just go ahead and keep on, cheering our Giants on and keep them
Yeah, absolutely.
encouraged and keep supporting them.
All right. Thank you so much, Kareem. I appreciate it. Have a great evening, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Same to you.